And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekday Warriors of Wrestling for December 4th, 2020. I'm Erik Clancy. I'm joined by Patrick Kelley. What a week in the world of professional wrestling, and I do mean the world of professional wrestling. We're going to jump right in because I think the major thing to talk about is everything that went down on Wednesday. Winter is Coming was, I would say this. Not only do I think it was the biggest Dynamite. I mean, you could say, I would say it was the most impactful Dynamite. The biggest one obviously was the first one for many reasons. But I mean, you could say from a storyline standpoint, the most happened on this show than any AEW show, barring the first Double or Nothing. Would I be correct in saying that?
I think you would be correct in that. I'll go a step further and even say since COVID and all of, the wrestling shows that we've seen during this new era in dealing with all that, I would say this has been the most impactful show during that period. It's the one that generated the most interest, at least for me and my circle of friends, for sure. We're still talking about it a couple days after the fact.
Yeah, there are people, I've talked to people who aren't really interested in wrestling, and they're like, wait a second, I heard Sting came back. And I mean, that's kind of the reaction you want. And like, if you're a pro wrestling company, and I mean, this show had good matches. The main event I thought was pretty great. But it wasn't about good matches, because as tough as this for some people to hear, and it's not being like, this is not to say, oh, I don't want good matches, because of course I do. Everybody wants good matches. But like, what really drives like interest in professional wrestling is compelling storylines and characters. Yes, you have to have the payoffs for those matches, obviously. But if it's just matches all day long, like, no one's going to care. And this was, I thought, the best AEW has ever done as far as setting up the future, and they do it pretty well for the most part. But my biggest criticism, and I told you this multiple times, Patrick, is I hate after an AEW pay-per-view, and granted, for the most part, and Full Gear was an okay one, but like for most every AEW pay-per-view, actually the last two have probably been the weakest, but every other one you're like, oh, that was great, it had great matches, but with the exception of Double or Nothing 1, when Moxley came out and attacked Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho, there's never been a point where like, wow, I want to know what's going to happen next. It's mostly like, okay, this guy won, I guess he's going to fight someone new now, and I mean, at the end of the day, that's what pro wrestling is, but you've got to add a little bit more of a hook. And I thought they did two big things on this show. We'll talk about them right now, and then we'll get into the rest of the show. But I thought they did two big things incredibly well. Let's start with Sting. I was not expecting this. I was expecting them to do a title change in the main event. I was expecting them to have like maybe the elite, the dark elite form, or I don't know, something. I did not expect Sting to show up. I know he left WWE in May. And it was cool because how many times have they done like the lights go out, and it's like, it's not that big of a deal. It'll be like, I don't know, like somebody you don't really care about. I mean, half the time it's Darby Allin, so it's like fine, but like, it's never a surprise like this. And I thought it was the Winter's Coming motif was fantastic because first of all, they could use it because Warner Media owns the Game of Thrones stuff. Second of all, man, Sting as a White Walker is like an association I didn't know I needed, but like it works perfectly. And we were texting during the show, and you're like, I thought it was going to be Glacier, and I'm like, I feel like that would be something they would do, but this was so much fucking better. And it was like Patrick, I'll let you give your thoughts on it in a second, but like I loved it because first of all, it was Sting on TNT, and there's something about that takes me back to 1996, 1995, and I'm like, cool. Not I'm cool, I'm just saying it's a cool like moment. And like him just going around, it's been pointed out multiple times, him seeing 4 generations of wrestlers in Arn Anderson, Dustin Rhodes, Cody Rhodes, and Darby was super cool. And like, it's just one of those moments. Like I talked to a friend afterwards, and he's like, yeah, he didn't really do anything, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, like, I mean, you're right. But like, I had chills throughout the whole thing. And like, you can't like logically talk that away, you know, like I had chills in the moment, like, and there was such a great joy from Tony Schiavone where just calling it out. And I was like, this is like fucking great and fun and cool. And it's awesome. And it was just a fun, had me on the edge of my seat, shaking my hands like a little kid. So I'm like, that's what you want out of pro wrestling, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'll be honest with you. When I saw the name show up on the video screen, I was like, "Wait, what? What's going on?" They literally had to spell it out for me because it completely caught me off guard. And like you said, the video and the music and everything was so cool. But when he walked out and Tony Schiavone called it, it's Sting, to hear that again on TNT after Sting was like the flag bearer for WCW for most of his career. And then he wrestled in WCW's final match on TNT. For him to come back here, I got swept up in it so much that the tears started coming out because it was both nostalgic and it was emotional and it was, and really I think more than anything else, I was really happy for him because I felt like Sting himself deserved that kind of, because this is going to be the end of his career, one would think, but he deserved to have that moment after everything that went down with WCW and everything that went down with his run in WWE.
Sting he was treated like absolute garbage in WWE, and we all saw it coming. And there was a perverse aspect of everyone, myself included, you included. When he went to WWE, you're like, I just want to see him in a WWE ring. It's just because people want to see things they haven't seen. Like I said it, you said it, And then he was in there, and you're like, and don't get me wrong, his debut in WWE was awesome. And it was great. Yep. And like that ending was fantastic. And then like he loses to Triple H. It's not even that he loses to Triple H, which was stupid. It's that it somehow became this weird WCW versus WWE storyline, which, by the way, Sting, I will grant you, represents WCW, but Triple H representing WWE or even the Attitude Era is so stupid and like incorrect. I can't tell you. Also, like people have said the NWO was supporting Sting. I'm like, I have less of a problem with that because he was in the NWO at a point. My problem is the fucking Clique comes down and attacks their hated enemies, the Clique. It's like Hall and Nash are like, man, there's nobody I hate more than Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and X-Pac. Let's go fight those guys. This makes no sense. It was wrestlers playing wrestling is what it was. And I'm just like, this sucks. Like, this is like, it's one of the reasons like that WrestleMania, like, is incredibly overrated. I know we all remember it great because Seth Rollins did beat Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, and we're like, oh, geez, thank God the thing we thought was going to happen didn't happen. But I don't think it's a great WrestleMania. It's got the terrible Undertaker squashing Bray Wyatt. It's got the Triple H and Sting. It's got, I mean, people remember the RKO, and they were, but I'm like, it's got a lot of shit on that show. So I don't know what to tell you.
Rusev's entrance is awesome.
Yeah, Rusev's entrance was great. People remember, I mean, it's exactly what WWE wants you to do. You remember moments and not the full context of how it was. But, in any event, yeah, no, I agree. I think Sting, it was cool to see him do that because he's always been a guy who's like, I'm kind of going to be with this with this other company, the non-WWE company. It was NWA and WCW, then it was TNA, and I think we've talked about it. TNA never really had a chance. And AEW is this spiritual successor to both WCW, ECW, the territories, and somehow WWF all at the same time. And it's like, yeah, man, like this is where you belong. Like, end your career here. Make Darby Allin a superstar. Like, do this, and I'm glad he did it because I feel like this is something he does want to do.
Yeah, and I was reading earlier today that in less than 24 hours, his shirt became the #1 selling shirt on I think it was Pro Wrestling Tees or something like that. So it's got a lot of people talking. It's got a lot of buzz, which is exactly what you want out of something like that.
His shirts set the record on Pro Wrestling Tees. The video from AEW was the #3 trending video on YouTube, and it's amassed like 1.8 million views in like 2 days or whatever it is. So like, I think it's paid off already. And here's the thing, like we'll talk about this show later, but like this show did huge numbers. It was tied for one on the night in the demo, which I hate to be the one to say it. It's the only thing that matters, ladies and gentlemen. I'm in advertising. The only thing people care about in advertising is
and
that
that's
demo.
always been the case too. This isn't a new thing.
No, I said it like you look at the Monday Night Raw stuff. They marked the demo. They didn't say this WWE had this many viewers and WCW had this many viewers. They would be like 3.2, 4.1. You know, like it's not fucking new. It's not rocket science. It's just what it is. You know, like it's not like like Raw has the highest demo. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you know, it is what it is. But they did a 0.42, which is the biggest number they've done since November of 2019. Which, by the way, everything in television goes down. AEW is steady or up. So that's huge. It, like, you know, for people who are like, they're not doing TNA numbers. I'm like, TNA numbers happened 10 years ago, and TNA numbers were like, it's based on where you are in the charts, not like where you are in absolute terms. So like they had huge numbers for this show, and I feel like they're going to have bigger numbers next week because not only did they deliver, they set up things for the future. They're like, hey, here's a surprise with Sting, and you're going to see him talk next week. So here's the thing, like, and this is what people always talk about. Like, they're like, oh, you always got to advertise the appearance. You always got to advertise the appearance. And I'm like, you do to a point, but if you have that cool surprise, you can create buzz. And then that can build into something greater. That number that they did not have advertised Sting. They now have Sting advertised for next week. So I feel like with the fallout for everything they did, that's what you want to do. You always want to grow your numbers. You want to like turn people onto it and keep them. Like WWE always does these like nostalgia shows, and they'll be like, hey, Steve Austin and Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan are here. And they come out and they're like, hey, everybody, here's our shtick, yabba dabba dabba da. And everybody's like, ha ha ha, that's great. And then it doesn't build into anything. And they're like, oh, the next week you can see all these people that suck that aren't Steve Austin and Hulk Hogan. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that. See you later. And they're like, oh man, why are we losing audience? And it's like the dumbest thing. Whereas AEW is like, let's build it. Let's use these names to get people on our product. And then you can see fucking Hangman Page and Wardlow and the Young Bucks tear it up. And you'll be like, hey, these guys are cool. I want to watch them. And I mean, that's WrestleMania 14 in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen. It's what led WWE to beat WCW.
And it's funny you mentioned WrestleMania 14 because that was the WrestleMania that indicated to me that WWF was going to win the war, because you look at the storylines that were heading into that show, Austin and Shawn Michaels with Mike Tyson thrown in, and Undertaker and Kane, and The Rock's growth and ultimate takeover of the Nation of Domination, all these things that they were doing, and everything was building week to week with all these big moments, big surprises, and we had Vince McMahon turning heel waiting in the wings, which we all kind of knew was coming, but we all couldn't envision it either because Vince had never really been a heel on WWF television. He had in his appearances in Memphis, but that's another story. But that's how you hook people. That's how you get them invested. And 4 and 5 star matches in the Dave Meltzer scale, that's, that should be like the cherry on top, not the drawing.
Well, it's what you have to pay off. I mean, if you set up these great storylines and you pay them off with great matches, then you have satisfied fans and you can keep doing it. But it can't be the only thing. You know what I mean? Like, I can serve you an amazing steak, like at a restaurant. Like, I'm a chef, like, pretend, and I'm cooking a dry aged steak that's been on an 800-degree grill with butter and like I serve it to you.
You know what you're doing.
I wish. I serve it to you on a paper plate with plastic utensils, and you're eating it in a cold room overlooking homeless people taking a shit. Doesn't really matter that the steak's great. It is objectively a good steak, but you have to dress it up. There's an ambiance. There's things. It's not just the matches, like there's always this like ridiculous thing that people would say, every match is a great match before it begins. Fuck no, it isn't. If I don't give a shit about somebody in the match, it's not a great match. And that's an inherent flaw with people thinking you always have a chance. No, you don't. You have to do half the work before you get into the ring. That's the trick.
How many times in recent years, and actually look, and I can't believe I'm saying this about an NXT takeover, but leading into this, we've got 2 War Games matches happening at this takeover on Saturday. I cannot be bothered to give a crap.
Yeah, I mean, and that's That's what happens when you blow feuds on television and you hotshot stuff. I mean, Winter is Coming has been built up for a month. I mean, it's a Moxley and Omega on free TV. And here's the thing. Here's another thing that they did that is going to grant credibility. And I think a lot of people tuned in knowing this. And we'll get back to Sting in a second, but they had a title change. Like, when was the last time on Raw there was a world title change?
Oh man, that's a good question. I'd have to think about it.
That's the thing.
I take it back. Drew won it back from Randy, which I believe would happen on Raw. That was recent, but that was the first time in a dog's age.
Wait, really? Did that actually happen? Is Drew the champion right now? That shows you how little I pay attention.
Orton beat him, and then Drew won it back to set up Roman versus Drew, champion versus champion with neither title line at Survivor Series.
Oh, and they did that Daniel Bryan AJ Styles thing. But like Raw title changes like rarely happen, and that's like that's the thing they always did. They're like, we can make all these world title matches on Raw. How many times did you see the world title defended in 1994 on Raw? I mean, maybe that one time with 1-2-3 Kid, but like, how many times do you see title matches that are not going to are clearly not going to have a title change and the question's not in doubt? This was a match where the outcome was in doubt, and they paid it off with the title change. But I do want to go back to Sting though. What we're talking about, we're talking about WrestleMania 14, and you saying that was like when WWE was going to win. I mean, that's 3 years of planning that show was. I mean, I think Vince was getting there in '96, and then Diesel and Razor left, and Brett left, and he kind of had to reload again. And he eventually did by '98, and he's like, hey, I've got my stars locked and loaded. I got Austin, I got Rock, I got the Outlaws, I got Triple H coming up, I've got Undertaker and Kane, Mankind. Sable. He's like, yeah, Sable, yeah, Ken Shamrock. He's like, I've got my players, I've built them up. Let's get a guy in here and let's expose my players to the world. And he did. And you and I have talked about this before, but if you don't know this, WrestleMania 14, it had 850,000 buys, and it lost money because they paid Tyson like $2 million or something. They couldn't recoup that, but like, it was a lost leader. It's like when McDonald's sells the McRib, they don't make profit on that, but they want you in the store. They want you to try the other things. And that's what they did with Tyson, and it paid off. And the idea here, and this is the difference. This is the difference between WWE now and AEW. AEW brings in Jake Roberts, and they bring in Taz, and they bring in Sting. And what I'm assuming they're going to do, because this is what they've done so far, they're not going to do what WWE does. They're not going to have The Rock and Goldberg and all these people come back and beat the shit out of all their current stars and make them look like losers. They're going to integrate them into the story, and they're going to enhance their players. Mm-hmm. They're going to say, hey, this is Darby Allin. We've invested a lot of time and energy and money into this guy in making him a big deal, and we're going to put him with Sting in some way. And the people that are watching Sting are going to say, hey, Darby Allin, who I want to point out to you, like a year and 6 months ago, nobody had a fucking clue who Darby Allin was. I mean, of course, there were people that saw him in the indies and stuff, but like Darby Allin has gone from a guy that you had not heard of to a guy that can credibly beat Cody Rhodes and is now possibly going to be paired with Sting, and that they've invested a lot of time and effort into. And like they're like, here are our players. We've got Cody, we've got the Young Bucks, we got Moxley, we got Omega, we got Jericho, we got Sammy, we got MJF. We've got this mix of established veteran and up-and-coming talent, and we want you to take a look at him. And that's what you have to do, and that's what Sting's there to do. I don't think he's going to come in there and beat up Sammy Guevara for 14 minutes. I will point out I thought it was stupid when they had Matt Hardy do that, but that's the exception to the rule. They're going to have Sting come in, and he's going to help these guys get over. I truly believe that.
Yeah, and that's typically what Sting does. Like in TNA, most of his time was spent like kind of working with guys. And yes, they put the world title on him and stuff, but he was still in, not too far past his prime, so it wasn't ridiculous. But
yeah, but he put over Ethan Carter. He put over AJ. Yeah, and the thing is, like, it's the same thing with Jericho. Like, I mean, WWE made the mistake of just having Jericho get beaten by everybody, and you're like, well, that makes him look like such a loser. Like, Jericho puts people over now, but like, he can't put every single person over,
Sure. Oh, he put MJF over, and that was great.
Yeah, he put Orange Cassidy over. He put Moxley over, but he's also beaten a ton of other people, and that's what makes those other losses mean a lot. Paul Heyman has a theory, and I subscribe to it actually. And there's this idea that like when a top star is on his way out, you job him to everybody in the territory. And Paul Heyman's idea, I think this is correct, is like you don't do that. You don't have job him to everybody. You pick one guy and you job him to him. So it's like Shane Douglas is leaving. Shane Douglas puts over Taz. Shawn Michaels is leaving. He puts over Steve Austin. Like, you don't make it look like this guy was a fucking idiot who was on top of your company for the whole time and great. You use him and you say, hey, who's the guy that I have faith in? And you transfer that over. And I think that works. So, like, you know, you don't have everybody beat Jericho. You don't have everybody beat like Sting and TNA, but you know, you pick your guys and you make sure you're making correct and wise selections. And I think that means a lot. That's why Brock Lesnar doesn't lose to everybody. He can't lose to everybody. But, you know, when he does lose to people, it means more.
Absolutely. And I'm intrigued to see what Sting has to say next week. And I guess after next week, we'll have a better idea of where he's going and what his role will be moving forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's cool. Apparently, from what Meltzer said, Sting actually wanted to be a regular character on WWE. Vince didn't want it. He just wanted the special attraction thing. And apparently he's signed a deal with Tony Khan and he's going to be in there week in and week out. And I mean, they've probably made their money back with him on merch already and and on some of these ratings. So like, you know, like cool. Like as long as you don't overexpose them, and I'm sure they won't. Like cool that like he's going to bring more eyeballs and more people are going to be interested in AEW, and as long as he's not like killing the young guys, I think that's great.
And what a drop ball by Vince, because we could have, and I hate to keep harping on it, but we can go back to that WrestleMania where Triple H beat him and all the stupidity surrounding that, but everybody wanted that Undertaker Sting match, and they had their opportunity to do it, and they just wouldn't do it, and I'm flabbergasted. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's like, so here's the difference between what you want and what the customers want. So like, apparently Vince didn't think it was an appealing match. I personally thought the match would not be very good. However, I cannot deny that every human being on the planet wants to see that. Not every human being, but like most fans want to see that match. So if I'm purveying a purveyor of a wrestling company, I'm going to say, well, you want this product, maybe I should give it to you at some point. Like, you know, it's just like, I really want this hamburger. Well, I don't want to see the appeal of that hamburger. I'm not going to sell it to you. Like, what the fuck? Like, you're...
I mean, he had them both under contract at the same time. And if he was going to lose his first WrestleMania match anyway, just do it then.
Yeah.
Why even do the Triple H match?
Well, we know the answer to that, but, well, hey, now Sting can beat Triple H in the ratings, which, you know, they do every week. So, okay, let's go to the other big thing. Let's go to Moxley and Omega. Patrick, what were your thoughts on the match?
I thought the match was very good. You know, it was very different from their last match, the unsanctioned war that they had. This one was more of a brawl, but kept it within the confines of like a traditional wrestling rule structure. And I thought they did very well within that confines. But really, the major talking point for me is what happened immediately after the match and the title change. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to be watching Impact on Tuesday night just to see what the hell they do to follow this up.
I haven't watched Impact since 2010, and I'm going to be watching it again. And I guess that is that shows that shows you that they did a good job. I'm going to talk about the match first because I like the match a lot. And it reminded me. So here's the thing: everybody is always saying like AEW is this weird like pro wrestling guerrilla promotion, or it's WCW, or it's like ECW or whatever. I'm like, dude, AEW is good WWF. AEW is like late rock and wrestling, new generation, early Attitude Era WWE. Like, it's just simple, well-built storytelling. And this is a key example. This match so much reminded me of Bret Hart and Diesel from Survivor Series 95. And it's stuff that WWE used to be like so good at. And the story to this was The story was simple. So Kenny's been turning into like a prima donna asshole for a while. And he says, yeah, we had a match, but it wasn't in the record books because it's not a real wrestling match. You didn't beat me in a wrestling match. You can't beat me in a wrestling match. Like if there are rules in a match and you need to follow them to beat me. And he's been goading Moxley into this thing the whole time to say like, hey, wrestle me. And Moxley essentially does. And Kenny breaks that agreement and schemes and cheats to beat him. And it's just such a he's the character is like so full of shit, and like he just like they set up this very simple thing: beat me in a wrestling match. And he's like, no, I am actually going to break the rules, which is what I criticized you for doing, to win the title. And it's like such good stuff. And it's like it's a microphone shot. It's not like a big deal, but it's just this like minor thing that like it tells a big story. And I like that. And it reminded me of Diesel and Bret Hart at Survivor Series 95. And so pretty standard big man, little man match where Diesel's like knocking him down and Bret's trying to take his wheels out from under him. And Bret is getting aggressive on Diesel, and Diesel matches his aggression and knocks him through a table and is eventually like, oh, geez, did I go too far? And he's feeling sorry. And then Bret rolls him up and pins him. And he's like, and there's this great shot where Diesel's like, what the fuck, right after the thing. And then he drops him with like 2 jackknives. And then the next night he's like, this is it. He's like, I carried the bullshit for however long. I'm going back to being the Diesel from Providence, Rhode Island in the Royal Rumble and in Survivor Series where I eliminated everybody. And it led to this big character moment for Diesel. It was actually kind of the original Stone Cold Steve Austin type character. And this reminded me so much of that because it led to such a big character thing for Kenny. And it was such a just like you didn't need a lot of gaga in it. It wasn't like, well, 18 people run down and then the lights go out and then you hit him in the balls and then 2 other people come out and then Kenny's mom comes out. Like it didn't need to be that. It was just a simple story that led to big consequences. And I really loved that.
And a lot of matches used to be like that, where it'd be like little detail that would. I've mentioned Hogan Andre before, but you go back and watch that WrestleMania 3 match. That spot at the beginning where Hogan fails to body slam Andre and Andre falls on top of him, and it looks
was that 2 or was that 3, Gorilla?
Exactly. That was the entire basis of their rematch because Andre swore he beat him at that moment, and that Hogan's win was illegitimate, and that was the entire justification for their rematch less than a year later. And little things like that really add a lot to the spice of the story and have kind of become a lost art, especially in WWE.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Fully Loaded 98. It's Undertaker and Austin going for the titles against Kane and Mankind, the tag titles. And Undertaker pins Kane with a tombstone. And there's this ongoing storyline, are Undertaker and Kane in cahoots? And Vince comes out and he says, Undertaker, I know you're in cahoots because at WrestleMania, it took 3 tombstones to pin Kane. And you're like, yeah, it fucking did. and you're like, wait a second. And it's like, it's just this simple shit. Like I don't mean that as a negative. I just mean like, it's just like, it's primal. It's easily understood. It's not convoluted. And it worked really well. So like, I thought the match was great. I thought after he hit him with the microphone and he was bleeding, and Kenny was just unleashing these like vicious V triggers. They looked fantastic. And I was like, dude, this guy is like brutal. I thought he came off as such a great heel. I thought people that were up, like there were a few people who were like, it didn't need a screwy finish. I'm like, the fuck it didn't. The storyline there
was why it worked.
It's required. And like, what are you upset about? Like the story was told. The story doesn't always have to be wrestler A fights wrestler B and one of them is better. Like it doesn't, it's that 90% of the time. It can be slightly different. And this isn't WWE where they do screwy finishes every match. And this wasn't even a screwy finish. They gave you a winner and a character made a choice to get there. And now we have to see the consequences. That's fucking storytelling. That's what it is, And then, of course, they run out Omega and Callis, and when we'll see you on Tuesday. And like, gee, okay, what's gonna happen next?
Wednesday.
Yeah, that was actually a cool line from Marvez, who I normally, is boring, but that was good. I mean, that's storytelling, so like everybody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about War Games. Nobody's talking about Raw. They're talking about fucking Impact. So I don't know what to say beyond they did something right,
You and I were texting throughout the show, while it was in progress. And then after the show was over, I called a couple friends of mine, and we were just, one of my friends missed the show, and we were kind of catching him up. And we were all just marking out the entire time. And this may have been alcohol fueled, I'm not sure. But we immediately started like pitching all these ideas of things they could do between Impact Wrestling and AEW. And look, for right now, all we know is that Omega's going to be appearing on Impact next week. For all we know, that could be a one and done. That could be it. And it could be a pre-tape. I have no idea. But if this turns into something bigger where we get like a real interpromotional war, that opens the gates for all different kinds of things that they can do. Even with Impact being in the state it's in right now, the idea of like a real interpromotional war is something that we've never really seen. Like the Invasion angle in 2001, Vince owned everything at that point.
Yeah.
So it was just WWF invading WWF. And this is like a different kind of animal where it's like, okay, who's going to start showing up? If people are going to start showing up, how much of a crossovers are going to be?
Well, it's real, right? I mean, obviously, it's still a pro wrestling show, but it's like it's a company and another company like doing an invasion angle to a. I mean, maybe it will be a short time thing, but like my mind started going, well, hey, the Good Brothers are on Impact. Are they going to reform the Bullet Club? Kenta has the briefcase in New Japan. Did he attack Moxley? Like, because he has the shot at the he has the shot at the U.S. title,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they were Kenny did the Rainmaker pose, like what's gonna happen,
Kota Ibushi and Omega could join forces, Golden Lovers.
Yeah, there's so many things that could happen, and it's like you gotta like just do what the WWE didn't do. Pace this shit out. Tell your story. I mean, I do think I don't know about the interpromotional aspect, but I do think the story that you've eventually got to tell, and I think they're going to. I think it's been leading to this since All Out 1 is Hangman has got to be the guy to take out Kenny eventually. It's like he's got to hit the depths that he's going to, like join the Dark Order, whatever he does, and then like he's got to like believe in himself and like be the guy to take him out. I think that's the final like. I think that's where this is leading to, which would be awesome. But the rest of the stuff, I have no idea.
Yeah, I was even thinking, the NWA women's title has been appearing on Dynamite lately, and it's like, I mean, it's not too out of the question for Nick Aldis to just randomly show up on AEW one week.
Is it? I've thought about that. I mean, and thank God, because the influx of women from NWA has really helped AEW. And like, I mean, and how freaking good has Britt Baker gotten in like 1 year?
Oh, amazingly good. A lot of people are screaming for her to get the title. And had they not gotten the likes of Ivelisse and Thunder Rosa, who's great, by the way.
Yeah.
Serena Deeb.
I had no idea she was Cobra Moon, by the way, until recently.
The mask hit it well. And, you get these really solid hands that have really helped out the division. But had they not come in, I'd be like, just put the belt on Britt. There's literally no one else.
Yeah, no, and there's so much you can do. And, like, I mean, like, the Sheeta-Abaddon match could be super cool.
I like Abaddon a lot, by the way.
Yeah, no, she's different and cool looking, so
she's like Lady Undertaker. I kind of like it, like early '90s Undertaker. Zombie.
Yeah, like creepy. Yeah. But Britt's just been like almost every feud. She's like, I mean, like she's almost like the Jericho of I mean, I call her the '98 version of the female version of '98 Chris Jericho, because just like she makes every segment work. She's like funny. She's an obnoxious heel, and like it's amazing because I remember when they first brought her in, and it was like she was very green. She was not a good baby face. And instead of being idiots and being like, let's just make her a baby face, because they're like, no, we'll lean into the heel thing. She's like gotten incredibly good. She's got an amazing look. She's like really good in the mic now. It's just like Yeah, and like I don't know, there's so many things that they can do with these partnerships. I mean, people are like, "Well, what's AEW getting out of this?" Well, AEW has 800 pieces of talent, and they can't all wrestle every week. So you can send some of these people, especially the women, a lot of them who need seasoning because there's a finite amount of like people out there to wrestle, and like, hey, you can go work on this NWA show, or you can work here, and we can invest in you and continue to watch you grow without having to put you on primetime TV and sacrifice a rating spot, you know?
Absolutely. And I think talents like Big Swole and Nyla Rose and some of those other ones that need a little bit more time to grow and develop could really benefit
And
from that.
we're in a COVID era where there's no touring house shows, and AEW didn't even have house shows beforehand. So like you need ring time and you need to learn how to get better. I mean, you're not going to be working a crowd, I guess, but you need ring time, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah.
Oh, another similarity. Well, two more similarities that Britt has with 98 Jericho. Very much like you said, having rewatched Nitro lately, I didn't realize this at the time, but rewatching, I was like, man, babyface Jericho sucked. And then they turned him
Yeah,
heel.
he was terrible.
Oh God, it was awful. So the heel turn instantly improved him. The other similarity, they both like to torture Tony Schiavone for some reason.
Yeah, no, that's great. What did you think of the Battle Royal?
I wish they had built it up more and like MJF having to defend the Dynamite Diamond Ring or whatever and make it mean a little bit more. As is, it just kind of felt like something that was thrown on there. It's going to be Orange and MJF for the ring, which is fine. I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to rush it, but part of me kind of wanted Sammy and MJF just to do like continue along with that.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do that too. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe they want to save it. So and they tend to AEW does. They tend to go in that direction. It's like, yeah, let's hold off a little bit before we.
Yeah, no, you don't need to do everything right there. I mean, there were people all out who were like, "Oh, I guess Wardlow and MJF at Full Gear." I'm like, "What? You don't need to do that now. Like, let this go. Let Wardlow get more ring time. He's getting better. Why do you need to pull the trigger immediately? Like, there's no fucking clock on this. You want to save these matches, you know." Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. WWE does these things where they're like, all right, let's put all 800. Let's have Kofi Kingston and Dolph Ziggler wrestle 400 times, or let's have Dolph Ziggler lose to 400 people. I'm like, well, if you ever have plans for Dolph Ziggler, it's going to be really hard for anyone to take him seriously when he's lost to everybody on the roster. Like, you notice that. Like, AEW doesn't have MJF lose a lot. They don't have Jericho lose a lot. They just had Moxley lose for the first time where he was pinned. They don't have Cody lose a lot. If they invest in you, they're not going to have you lose a lot. And that makes sense because you want to build up these guys to be something larger than life and stars. Whereas WWE, you have this weird ass like parody where everybody's on the same plane except for like, I don't know, John Cena or whatever. And one guy isn't enough to carry an entire company. You need multiple guys.
And I've said this before, you've said this before, you look at both the Rock and Wrestling era and you look at the Attitude era, the two most successful periods for the WWF/WWE, and it wasn't just Austin and Rock and Hogan and Savage. It was deep, deep rosters all throughout the card, full of stars, great tag divisions, great mid-cards, and great main events. And that's what they delivered.
Yeah. I mean, yes, did Austin main event most of the Attitude Era stuff? Like, yeah, and like Rock did to a point, but like, I mean, he needed dance partners. He needed Foley. He needed Kane. He needed Undertaker. He needed Triple H eventually, and Angle, and those guys and stuff. So you need to like have those guys, and there gets to a point where you get so. I'm not saying you don't, like I said earlier in the show, I was like, oh, you got to make wise decisions on who you have beat people. And I do believe that, but you get to a point where you overanalyze stuff to such an insane degree that you're like, well, if I'm looking at MJF and I'm like, Vince McMahon is like, well, he can talk. He's in good shape. He's a good worker. He's good on, he's good in the ring. He's short though. And you're like, yeah, that's true. And there is the factor that a casual person comes on and says like, I'm not going to buy that guy as a star, but like, are you going to let that hold you back? Like Randy Savage was like 6'1". Roddy Piper wasn't that big. Ric Flair wasn't that big. Like you go back and we justify some of these things because we've seen them become stars. Like, you're like, oh, well, like like, I mean, I've said it to you 1,000 times. I would have never pushed Hogan in that position, but like, am I an idiot? Because at the end of the day, whether Hogan had hair or not, or he didn't have six-pack abs or whatever, the things that I would look for in a star, like, he made a ton of money and people connected with him. So at a certain point, am I shooting myself in the foot? And that's what like Vince does with some of these people. He's like, he overanalyzes and like, are you going to not push MJF just because he's like 5'10", 5'11"? I mean, maybe, but MJF was in the New York Times today. In New York, he was in the New York fucking Times saying he was one of the best performances of 2020 in the goddamn New York Times.
Yeah. Like, that segment that a lot of people online didn't like, that's what got him the attention, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and it's like so like at a certain point you're like, like okay, Drew Brees is short, but he's like, I don't know. He's got a really good completion percentage. He's like playing really well. Like, at a certain point you outthink yourself and yeah, Darby Allin's a little skinny and stuff, but like, I don't know, like maybe some like skater kids are going to connect with him in a way that other pro wrestlers might not, like, yeah, I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. I'll make this comparison. One of my favorite movies in the last decade was Moneyball. I friggin' love that movie.
Yeah, me too.
It was basically The Social Network, but applied to a sport, and I just found it infinitely fascinating because of it. But one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Brad Pitt's sitting in the room, and all these old timers are going over. It's like, that guy's got an ugly girlfriend. He's probably not that good. These weird reasons to reject people. And they just sounded like they were just talking themselves out of a potential team that could get them victories. And that's really what the movie was about. It was about taking this whole island of misfit toys and making a winning team out of it.
Well, that's a great example, because there's that great line in that scene where Brad Pitt says is like, sorry, you still there?
I'm still here.
Yeah, sorry, I just got a weird thing on my phone. Brad Pitt says, or Scout's talking to him, and he says, well, it's like, this guy, he's going to be a great hitter. And then Brad Pitt's like, well, if he's a great hitter, why doesn't he hit so good? He's got a 160 batting average. And they're like, well, he's got a great swing and stuff. Like, but why doesn't he hit good then? And then they're like, well, you give him more at bats. And he's like, let me get this straight. He's not hitting well in AAA, but we're going to give him more at bats against major league arms, and then he's going to be a better hitter. And they're like, yeah. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And it's like, it's like, I mean, it's like the Roman Reigns thing. It's just like, or the John Cena thing. And it's like, oh, well, I don't know. It's just we get really caught up in this shit sometimes. Cause like, I go back and I look at some of these wrestlers and I'm like, wow, Bob Backlund. Yeah, he was really small. And they're like, yeah, well, but Bob Backlund was an amateur wrestler. Oh, okay. Well, Ric Flair was really fun. Oh, Ric Flair could talk. Okay. Roddy Piper can go. Like, it's we make these excuses for people that did in the past, but we don't do it for people in the future.
It's very weird. I wonder if, and I think you and I have touched up on this before, but it's kind of like we lived through The Rock during his best years.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people saw The Rock, and he was a guy that literally had everything. He had the look. He looked like a movie star almost from the word go. And once they turned him heel, the mic skills came out, and he had the in-ring ability. He had literally everything you could possibly want. And ever since then, it's like there's been that search for the next Rock, the once-in-a-lifetime type of guy who literally has everything. And not everybody has everything, and not everybody needs everything. You can just do one thing really well. Jake Roberts, for example. Jake Roberts, I think on a good night, had 3 moves. What he did have, though, he had the coolest finisher in wrestling, and he was one of the best talkers out there. And he had the snake, which was a cool gimmick that nobody was doing. So 3 things.
Yeah. And I mean, and like Jake Roberts, I mean, he had a gut. He wasn't, like, he was tall, but like, he was lanky. He wasn't the most intimidating, like, looking guy. Like, that would knock him down today. I mean, like Steve Austin. Like, Steve Austin was balding. He eventually shaved his head, but Steve Austin was 6'1". Wasn't the biggest guy. I mean, you look at him now and you look at some of these people, and yeah, as you get older, you get like wider. You just get like, when you're younger, you have less fat, you have less mass on you. You can get like slightly bigger. You see some of these guys that you're like, I mean, Matt Hardy looks like really big now, and like, yes, people around him are smaller, but he's also like expanded like left and right wise, I mean, there's very few people. I mean, you see The Rock, you see Brock Lesnar, and like, oh, when can we find a guy like Brock Lesnar? Oh,
Brock Lesnar can't talk. That's another thing. Like Brock
Yeah.
Lesnar, he's not a great talker.
And Brock admits that. He's like, just give me a manager. And like, this is the thing. You're supposed to take these things. I mean, like I've always say, like, Shawn Michaels has everything. He was handsome. He was like, Shawn Michaels was 6 foot, and and like he wasn't the biggest guy, same with Brett. Like everybody has, with the exception of like The Rock, like you said, like pretty much, like even Hogan was balding. Hogan wasn't in the greatest shape, I mean, he was in good shape, but he wasn't like Rock, like looks like The Rock, Yeah. But like with the exception of The Rock, you're pretty much right. Like, and I don't think you're gonna get another one of those guys. And I think you need to be, I think you need to, wrestling promoters need to stop relying on guys like that, because they didn't come around before The Rock. They're not coming around after The Rock. You're just going to have to do what people did before The Rock and after The Rock. And that's like enhance your stars where you can.
Let the talents be themselves and let them do what they do well. And I think they'll surprise you. I think they can do some really good things.
Yeah. All right. I feel like we've had good discussion today. Everybody, thanks for listening. Hopefully we will be back next week, and we'll chat about all the stuff that happens after this, right?
Oh, it's going to be next week. I'm super excited for both Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah. So we'll keep you all posted on that. And thank you very much for listening. Remember to like and share. Always appreciate it. But for myself and for Patrick Kelley, we are
signing off.